2016 has come and gone, and so it's time for our Year in Review show. What are the highlights of this past year? What stands out most in your mind? What's your favorite Pope Francis moment? Joining me for this today is our panel of Salt and Light producers. But first, a lot has taken place this year, and so let's refresh your memory. So lots has been going on this year. Let's cut to the chase. Joining me now are Sebastian and Emilie, two people you know very well. Guys, what's the biggest Catholic story of the year?
I think we both know the answer to that.
What do you think?
Well, definitely, I think the Year of Mercy has been pretty significant and probably maybe one of the biggest years since Pope Francis' pontificate.
Yes.
I mean, it's you know, his...
I think he's been like the Year of Mercy since he was elected 4 years ago.
Exactly.
So it's good to make it official.
What's unique about this year is not, it's not that one particular thing has really stood out. It's that the entire year has been looked at through this lens of mercy. And so the church, because Francis is so great at embodying the teachings that he gives us, like mercy, for example, it's not some concept or idea, it's a real thing, it's a tangible thing. He does it, he shows it to us. It's very powerful. So all of a sudden the church as a whole is really reflecting on what does it mean to be a merciful church? What does it mean to be a merciful Catholic?
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
For me, it was the fact that it was the Year of Mercy, but the fact that it was a Jubilee year, and we've had other Jubilee years in my lifetime, but there was something different about this one. In things that Pope Francis was doing, like the once a month
Mercy
Fridays and the Jubilee, I guess they call them Jubilees, the Jubilee celebrations that I don't think anybody else had ever done that. And that seemed to, it was this truly a year-long celebration that kept reminding us through these moments.
And how often, too, did he say when he was talking about mercy in an official teaching or during his general audiences, which he often talked about mercy? It wasn't just, during this year we're celebrating mercy. It was, this is now the place from which the church starts.
Exactly.
We start with mercy. We start by understanding ourselves in this way. And that means that with the close of the door at the end of the Year of Mercy doesn't mean the close of mercy.
Doesn't mean that we're done with mercy. No more mercy.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, speaking of doors, that's one of the unique things of this year as well, was that you not only had the holy doors opening in Rome or in like the major, areas in the world where we already had these holy doors,
but holy doors everywhere.
All over the world. I think there were over 10,000 doors.
Like
exactly. And so it was really his way of saying, I want the Year of Mercy to not just be like this centralized event, but really something that's accessible to as many people as possible.
Actually, the whole thing about the doors also, to me, there was something, because we've had Holy Door and Jubilees before, but the fact that it's a Holy Door fits so nicely with this idea of mercy, that we go through this door of mercy.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's not the same as to just go through any random Jubilee door.
No, and there's a kind of expectation of conversion, and that's like that's the symbolism of going through a door or being baptized. Like you think about like the old baptismal fonts where you go down and come back up, and there's a newness that comes about. That's what this whole thing is about, and it's Francis really tapping into one of the very fundamentals of the gospel, what he calls the name of God, mercy, understanding that conceptually, but then living that out.
Yes, and I love that. And the last thing maybe is that because it wasn't just a year for us to practice mercy, but also I think to receive mercy, to contemplate on what it means to receive God's mercy.
And that it's always a gratuitous gift. It's never something that you do, like you earn. That came through abundantly clear.
Yeah. Okay, good. We're going to have to leave it there. The most significant Catholic news story of the year is definitely the Year of Mercy. what is the most significant secular story of the year?
Well, I mean, maybe to make the link with the Year of Mercy, one of the significant events I saw was the canonization of Mother Teresa. And this isn't a secular story per se, but because Mother Teresa was just she's such a transcendent figure in our world. She's a universal symbol, right, of mercy, but also of care for the poor, for the marginalized. And I think a lot of people were anticipating this and excited about.
Right, it was definitely covered in secular news outlets.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Like the Catholic Church has a huge diversity of saints, right? Everybody's different, and so sometimes, you know, you're a hermit isolated in a cave somewhere and you're a saint.
Yes.
But sometimes you actually have a profound impact on the world, so much so, someone like Mother Teresa, someone like John Paul II, that the world, like the canonization becomes a world, really a world celebration. It's not just a church celebration, and that's one of the things about her canonization was that the kind of testimony that we heard coming from Hindus and other non-Christians and non-Catholics, especially from India, where she ministered for most of her life, but really all over the world. I mean, you know, she struck a chord with the human heart, and she really put mercy into action. And they're kind of, you could see, but her and Francis are kind of kindred spirits in that sense. You know, in the practicality of it, it's not just about talking about systemic things that we need to change. It's look at the person in front of you who's suffering and help that person.
And she really lived that mercy. So that's a good link. I think for me, the other story is maybe not one. It has nothing to do with mercy, or maybe it does. But I mean, the U.S. election. Don't you think that was a big secular story this year?
Yeah, I mean, in our part of the world, I mean, Canada, bordering the United States, we can't escape this. The surprise election, obviously, of Donald Trump, and the reason why it's really important to talk about this is because there was a kind of a tiff between Donald Trump and Pope Francis, right? And if you remember, in February of 2016, Pope Francis goes to Mexico, you know, and then when he was asked about Donald Trump, who was campaigning at the time, on the plane back to Rome, you know, he said very clearly, anyone who talks about building walls, as Donald Trump has done repeatedly about building a wall across the southern U.S. border with Mexico, anybody who builds walls instead of bridges is not a Christian. And Donald Trump took offense to this and you know, came back at the Pope a little bit. But you know, it's a fascinating thing, and what it really is a challenge to the church in North America, and especially in the United States, to say, you know, what is our role in the society? What happens when you have a figure who is seemingly diametrically opposed to the leader of the Catholic Church, and not only in terms of immigration and refugees, but also the environment?
I was going to say that even at a very practical level, I think that if you look at a secular story that affects Catholics, I mean, just how polarized the Catholic vote was in the United States. That whole, I mean, we were struggling here in Canada to make sense of what was happening and why it was so polarized in a way that I don't think I'd seen before.
Yeah, and it's a good point, because a lot of people talk about, you know, what is, like, is there a Catholic vote? And is it a swing vote? And like, what? And really, what we saw, that it was pretty much split, you know, 50-50. And that's reflective, like you said, about the divisions that exist in the American church especially, and how politics comes first for a lot of people as opposed to their belief and the community of faith that they belong to, which is the church. So the bishops, especially in the United States, have their work cut out for them, although they're not totally on the same page either, all of them. So it's a real challenge. The next 4 years, maybe 8 years, is going to be a real challenge. I look forward to, you know, Pope Francis, you know, meeting Donald Trump and seeing what that happens.
It'll be interesting. Maybe something to look forward next year. We got to leave it there. Most important secular story of the year that has affected the church, I would say the U.S. election, but obviously Mother Teresa, she's in a more positive way. What do you think was the most significant papal teaching of the year?
I think it has to be unanimous among the three of us, Amoris Laetitia.
Was there any other?
The Apostolic Exhortation of Pope Francis, which is the great conclusion of the two-stage Synod of Bishops on the family, looking at the challenges to family life, and this is just an absolutely remarkable landmark document that's going to affect the pastoral approach of the Universal Church for many years to come. And part of the reason of that is that it's not just, and I just alluded to this, it's not just a document from Pope Francis, it's a universal church document because of the number of bishops who were participating in these synods not only in the actual event, but in the consultation and, you know, writing in their responses and asking the faithful what they thought about
and
this.
for what, a year and a half or so from the first questionnaire that went out before
I
the
think
first
over 2
synod?
years.
Yeah,
Over
2 years.
2 years.
So it's really...
This is a universal church deliberation, and it's just, it's absolutely remarkable. There's a lot of great stuff in it.
Yeah, and I think that anyone can really pick up this document, read it, and understand what's in it. There's no, you know, you don't get confused in this foreign language maybe that someone who doesn't have like this great theological background would need to.
That's typical Francis. Too.
Right, exactly. So it's a very accessible document.
It's so again, practical. I don't think, for me personally, since John Paul II's Theology of the Body, which was actually general audience addresses, and it's hard to read, but I find it so practical. And so is Amoris Laetitia, so practical. Everybody lives in a family, everybody comes from a family, whether broken or not. It's a family, there are marriages, we all know marriages. And even in my own personal ministry, I've found that it speaks to exactly what I see in the parish, in what couples are going through, and marriages and families going through.
A lot of people have said that, you know, sometimes they kind of hold their breath when they know that the church is going to say something about marriage and family life, because you have, you know, this group of celibate old
and we
men
knew that he was going to talk about
reflecting on family life, and everybody's like, oh, like just don't say anything that's like, you know, a little bit, you know. And Francis, like, clearly, this is someone who has listened to and been close to people in very complex situations. And I want to say something about this, because the whole approach is so pastorally oriented and about accompaniment. Everything in it is just suggest proximity to people who are living as best they can, family life, trying to do their best. But even in the complex situations, and this is where some debate has come about, especially in chapter 8. When you're looking at pastoral accompaniment, specifically in those complex situations, divorced and remarried people, you know, all kinds of things. And there's been even some bishops have said publicly, like, there's some confusion here, and we need the Pope to clarify what he means because previously to this, if you were divorced and remarried, for example, you couldn't go to communion. And it seems that in this document, Pope Francis has opened the door to that. But it's really important to point out the people that are sort of against this feel that this undermines the doctrine of marriage, the indissolubility of marriage. And that's not the case. Francis and all the bishops who support this, which is the vast majority in the world, have said very clearly, this is not about the teaching itself. It's not about the doctrine. It's about our approach to the situation. It's about how we look at people who are in these difficult situations.
So we don't look at people with doctrine in our, you know, we look at the person that's sitting in front of us.
That's right. And so it's not,
and so it's not, situation,
it's funny because it's not really about, you know,
applying the law.
The person.
No,
it's about us. It's about the pastors of the church, you know, and how they, so there's a conversion that needs to go on at that level, and that's what Francis is trying to push forward, and most of the bishops agree, and some are having a little bit of difficulty with it because they don't want to change, and they think that the law must be, you know, absolutely applied across the board.
Yeah, I like Theology of the Body. I think that this is a document that's we're going to keep getting, you know, it's just going to keep giving and giving and giving, and it's just going to get unpacked and translated in different versions and applications. So we need to leave it there. For sure, Amoris Laetitia, the most significant papal teaching of the year. So do we agree that there was one major event this year?
Well, I mean, and we're not biased, right? That we're going to pick World Youth Day in Krakow, Poland.
You think so? Yeah, I would agree.
I think so. I mean, the fact that we were there too, you know, it was just an incredible experience. But the fact that this World Youth Day took place in Krakow, a city, or in a country really, which is mostly Catholic, was different than previous World Youth Days, even just for that, because usually a World Youth Day goes in a city where, you know, there needs to be some kind of conversion, or, you know, to bring about some kind of change, right, or bring hope to that place. And here we have really a place that is bringing hope to the rest of the world, right? So the rest of the world is coming to this country, and it's being evangelized through the saints that have come from that place.
I mean, the city of saints, right? Krakow. I mean, even the whole fact that it took place during the, clearly somebody thought about this, you know, like the Year of Mercy, the World Youth Day of Mercy in the City of Mercy, John Paul II, Divine Mercy.
Well, this is what happens in the Catholic Church, right? Like, we have such this tremendous tradition that anniversaries and celebrations keep on coming
Yes.
up,
Yes.
and oftentimes, you know, this is how the Lord works. Sometimes He brings a lot of things together, and certainly it was, you know, no accident. I think that during the Year of Mercy, we go to the City of Mercy, St. Faustina, St. John Paul II, obviously, the birthplace of divine mercy, and Francis, you know, in his own unique way, but re-emphasizing mercy very practically, building on that and pushing us a little bit forward. But it was a remarkable experience. I know a few things really stand out to me. The Friday was amazing.
Way of the
Pope
Cross.
went the way of the cross, and before that, the Pope went to Auschwitz.
Ah, right.
Which
you
both
you
Emily
had
and I got a chance to go to early in the morning one day to do some filming, and it was very peaceful and quiet. There was nobody else there, and that was what it was like for Francis as well. And just the significance of him walking through it in utter silence, you know, to pay his respects to that moment and to reflect on, you know, the great suffering of so many individuals in that treacherous place. And then he said later, you know, that this is not something that's ended 70 years ago.
No.
This kind of suffering, the way we treat each other, is still happening in these brutal ways. And sometimes there's just no words to describe that kind of evil. And Francis offered us kind of a lesson, a reflective lesson on what that meant.
Well, and I think that the World Youth Day happened as well. That was the whole backdrop, right? I mean, of the situation in the world. I mean, just at right at the beginning of World Youth Day, we heard about the tragic murder of the priest in France, Father Jacques Hamel, right? Yeah. And so that really kind of set the tone for the whole World Youth Day. And there were, you know, a lot of security. I mean, security was just heightened because, you know, we wanted to make sure that obviously these pilgrims were safe. But that was the whole backdrop of World Youth Day. And so to kind of culminate to the Friday with the Way of the Cross was just like extremely powerful.
And what a testament that is to the world. Like the reason why we're talking about it as the singular most significant event of the year is because in a world that is divided and filled with hatred and pain and war and persecution, the Catholic Church, young adults who are faithful people, still come together, hundreds of thousands of them, to celebrate. In the face of that, with the possibility of something like that happening, you know, coming together and offering the world a picture of what a really, truly diverse but united world can look like. Because you pan the crowds, you see the Catholics from all over the world.
All over the world, and in silence on a Saturday night. How many people you guys were there on that in that field? 1 million people in silence. That always blows me away. I was in Krakow, but I wasn't able to be there that night. Definitely the event of the year, not just the Catholic event, but the event of the year, World Youth Day. So, what are you looking forward for 2017?
Well, I think something that we have to really keep front and center is the commemoration, 500th anniversary of the Reformation. This is obviously a historical schism between Catholics and what became Protestants, Protestant churches. And really, since Pope Francis was elected, ecumenism, or the work for Christian unity, has been on the front burner. I mean, he wants unity to happen. He's really started this push, this renewed push, and a lot of the other Christian churches have followed suit. It's funny that sometimes it takes the Catholic community to kind of start the ball rolling on something that everybody in their heart wants, but it takes
the Catholic
big,
Church can
you know,
do it.
the big Catholic Church, you know, as complex and global as it is, to kind of get the ball rolling. And that's what Francis has done. And for him, what's really interesting about this is we expect to see great strides being made because he's leaving the theologians to do their thing. He doesn't really pay attention to what the theologians are talking about. Some of the doctrinal issues that still need to be hammered out, he's leaving it to them, and he's saying in the meantime, all of us can walk hand in hand and be doing things together. Not only praying together, but working for social justice, for social concerns, helping refugees, you know, standing together. He talks all the time about this ecumenism of blood, because Christian persecution knows no, you know, division among the churches. It's like the person who's killing you doesn't ask if you're a Catholic or a Lutheran or whatever. And I'm especially interested in seeing what happens with the Lutheran Church. I think some real strides will be made here. We're very, very close right now to the Lutherans. And Pope Francis has been saying some very positive things about Martin Luther, who a lot of us, you know, have been taught in our history books thing, you know, is a heretic.
Yes, exactly.
You know, so I think Pope Francis is going to build on those personal relationships and push the ecumenical movement very, very far forward in 2017.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too, but I'm curious to know what you're thinking.
Definitely. Well, I mean, we're talking about some of the trips that the Pope has done. A lot of them, again, had an ecumenical basis to them.
Yeah.
And as we know, the Pope turned 80,
yes.
Which, I mean, it's quite a feat, right?
With his schedule. Yeah.
With his schedule, right? And he doesn't seem to be slowing down. I mean, of course, like with the Jubilee year that we just saw ending, and he did 6 trips, which has been a lot, really, for 1 year for a Pope. And I think in the next year he might slow down a bit in terms of the number of international trips that he's doing, but he will be still continuing his meetings, especially with bishops, those that he hasn't been able to meet for their ad limina meetings, which they normally do every 5 years.
Yeah,
every
that's
5
right.
years.
Yeah, no, that'd be
so
interesting
those
to see. And there are some questions. When you get to 80, people start asking questions about your health and everything. So there's all kinds of speculation about the current physical state of Pope Francis, but he gives every indication that not only does he have the energy, but he seems happy. I mean, people say this. He seems happy. He seems peaceful. And I think I think if Pope Francis felt that he wanted to leave or resign, he would do that. I think he would feel totally free to do that.
Well, I think someone had asked him in an interview.
But I don't think he will.
No.
I think someone had asked him in an interview, like, what's your secret? And he said prayer and sleep.
Right.
There you go.
That's true. Okay, we're going to leave it there, but I'm going to throw one more out because even though the next synod is not in 2017, it's 2018, but the process is going to begin again. So I'm looking forward to that conversation beginning. It's about youth and vocations. So I think we're going to get a lot of feedback from youth ministers and youth ministry, and that's going to happen this year, 2017. Thank you very much. We're going to leave it there. We've been remembering 2016 and looking forward to the new year. Please send us your comments. Facebook and Twitter. Let us know what the most significant event of the year was for you. What do you remember most? What was the highlight of the year for you? Joining me today was Sebastian Gomes and Emilie Callan, 2 of our Salt and Light producers. I'm Deacon Pedro. Thank you for being with us, and have a blessed and holy 2017.